perhaps a few face-to-face students who may have been absent during class today. I just wanted to give you a quick review of the notes that we went over in class. Even if you weren't here, I'm going to suggest that you write this down in your notebook. It's going to help you retain some of the important information for the course and hopefully help you to ace your next exam, which will be coming up at the end of this unit. The topic for today are the global goals for sustainable development. I'll tell you more about those in just a little bit. The objective for today is to identify causes of oppression and analyze proposed solutions. When we're talking about oppression, we're talking about times when people are treated unfairly. And a lot of times that occurs as a result of inequality. We'll define inequality today as the state of not being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. Interestingly, this is a challenge faced by both developed and developing countries. We see it right here in our own backyard. Take, for example, inequality in public education. As a student in the perilocal schools, your district is spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $16,000 per pupil on you, which sounds really good, and it is. But if you go to a neighboring school, perhaps like at Orange or a Beechwood, they're spending upwards of $21,000 per pupil on their kids. And on the flip side, if you go to a poor rural district or a poor urban district, they're spending in the neighborhood of $11,000 per pupil. So in something as basic as education, we see inequality in our own country, and we see it in other areas as well. This unequal distribution of resources can lead to conflict, and in more severe instances, displacement. So sometimes this inequality rears its ugly head in the form of war or violence. Sometimes it's so bad that people pick up and move where they're living. In an effort to make sure that everyone has an opportunity at prosperity, the United Nations a few years back started something they called the Sustainable Development Goals. More simply, the global goals, or if you like abbreviations, the SDGs. Essentially, these Sustainable Development Goals are a universal call to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity for all. Interesting thing about these goals is there's 17 of them, which is kind of an odd number. You would think if you're making goals, you might choose a round number like 10 or perhaps just a few goals like 5. But in order to get every single member nation in the United Nations to agree on the goals, they had to do some compromising and some wheeling and dealing. And so to make everyone happy, they settled on 17. And because of that, they were able to get unanimous approval in the United Nations, meaning 193 countries in the UN General Assembly agreed to those goals back in 2015. We're going to spend some time during class today looking at those goals through a little activity. But before we do that, I also want to give you 2 more definitions. The next term is charity, which a lot of times people think of as the voluntary giving of help to those in need. And unfortunately, people have the misperception that it's just wealthy people giving their excess wealth to those in need. Truth be told, we all can be charitable. Charity can alleviate inequalities, and it can spread a message of humanity during times of conflict. And in an attempt to get more people practicing charity, a day was founded just a few years back called the International Day of Charity. It was established by the United Nations to mobilize people around the world to help others through voluntary activities. This occurs annually on September 5th. And that is the day that Mother Teresa passed away back in 1997. For those of you who don't know, Mother Teresa was a Catholic nun who founded a charity in Calcutta, India, living amongst the people of the streets, ministering to lepers and the sick. She did lots of great works and was actually recently named a saint by the Catholic Church. So to commemorate her acts of charity, the United Nations made this an annual event so that others could practice charity too. So now a quick look at the big picture. The main reason that we want you to be familiar with these Sustainable Development Goals is that throughout the year in Perry Service Learning, any time that you volunteer, you're going to tie that volunteer activity back to one of the 17 global goals established by the United Nations in 2015. And at the end of this week, we're going to celebrate the International Day of Charity by going out into the community and performing a variety of activities that tie back to some of these global goals. I think perhaps Mother Teresa said it best some years ago. She said, "Yesterday is gone, tomorrow has not yet come, we have only today." It seems like a particularly poignant quote given these times that we're living in. We must seize the day to do what we can to help our neighbors, and that's what PSL is all about. Now that you've got the notes down and you got a better sense of what the big picture is, we're going to apply this information. What I'd like you to do next is go to the Global Goals Learning Station Rotation activity that's linked on the agenda, and you're going to have a chance to apply each of the 17 global goals to photographs, to quotes, to PSL programs, as well as to a short video that I'm going to ask you to watch. After that, I think you'll have a much better handle on exactly what these goals are, and when you're volunteering throughout the course of the year in PSL, you'll be able to tie each volunteer activity that you do back to one of these global goals. Good luck.